David Walker, 34, had always been a man of the earth. Growing up on a family farm, he developed a deep connection with the land, working long hours planting, harvesting, and maintaining the property. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was meaningful, and David took pride in the work his hands did. He'd inherited the farm from his parents, and though the work was demanding, it provided a sense of fulfillment that money could never replace. Claire, 32, his fiancée, was a completely different person. A corporate lawyer with a prestigious firm in the city, Claire's life revolved around meetings, business dinners, and networking events. She prided herself on her polished appearance and her ability to navigate high society with ease. As their relationship grew, Claire had always seemed supportive of David's work, though he often wondered whether she truly understood it or just tolerated it. For the last 3 years, they had been inseparable, planning for a future that they envisioned would balance both their worlds, the simplicity of the countryside and the sophistication of the city. Despite their differences, David thought they had something special, something that transcended their separate lives. One day, Claire excitedly invited David to her firm's annual gala, a lavish event that would allow him to meet her colleagues and immerse himself in the world she lived in. David, though uneasy about it, agreed. He wanted to support her and be part of her life, even if it meant stepping outside of his comfort zone. The gala took place at a high-end downtown hotel, with crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and elegantly dressed people exchanging pleasantries over champagne. David, in his tailored suit, felt like a fish out of water. The crowd was filled with well-groomed professionals, wearing tuxedos and expensive dresses, and he felt like an outsider in his simple attire. Claire, on the other hand, fit right in. She moved effortlessly through the crowd, chatting with her colleagues and making small talk about the latest corporate deals and high-profile clients. David couldn't help but feel a sense of alienation as he followed her around, not fully participating in the conversations. But he tried to stay positive, focusing on the fact that he was there to support her, not to be part of the crowd. About an hour into the evening, Claire introduced David to a group of her colleagues, including Jonathan, a senior partner at the firm. Jonathan, dressed in a sharp black suit, looked David up and down before asking, "So, what do you do for a living?" "I run a farm," David said, keeping it simple. "I manage the crops and livestock." Before Jonathan could respond, Claire chimed in with a laugh, "Oh, it's so quaint. He's like the modern-day farmer, really great with his hands. A real rugged type." The group of people chuckled lightly, and David felt his stomach churn. While Claire seemed to think it was a harmless joke, David's pride was wounded. He worked hard every day, and his job was something that mattered to him, but it seemed like Claire didn't see it that way. She had reduced his career to something laughable. Still, he tried to brush it off, telling himself he was overreacting. But as the night went on, the unease only grew. Later in the evening, Claire took to the stage to make a toast, thanking her team for their hard work. But in the middle of it, she turned to David, grinning widely, and said, "I'd also like to thank my amazing fiancé, David. He's not exactly a corporate guy, but he's great with his hands. He's always busy on the farm, so if you ever need someone to fix your tractor or do some yard work, you know who to call." The room burst into laughter. David's face turned crimson, and he felt a wave of humiliation wash over him as dozens of eyes turned to look at him. He wasn't a handyman, he was a skilled farmer, a professional who took great pride in what he did. Yet, in that moment, Claire had stripped him of that dignity and reduced his hard work to a punchline. David's gaze locked onto Claire, silently pleading for her to see his discomfort, but she was too busy soaking up the attention. She was basking in the spotlight, enjoying the laughter at his expense. Feeling like he was suffocating, David excused himself from the table and stepped outside for some air. The night was cold, and the fresh air provided a brief respite from the suffocating weight of embarrassment he felt. He replayed Claire's words over and over in his mind, feeling the sting of her casual dismissal of his passion. A few minutes later, Claire came outside, still holding her glass of wine, and approached him with a smile. "David, what's going on? Why'd you run off? She asked, her tone light and carefree. David turned to her, trying to keep his voice steady. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? He asked, his frustration beginning to boil over. Claire blinked in confusion. What do you mean? It was just a joke. Everyone thought it was funny. It's not just a joke, David said, his voice now firm. It's how you keep treating my work, like it's some sort of joke. You've done this before, Claire. But tonight you went too far. Claire's expression shifted, a defensive glare replacing her confusion. David, you're overreacting. I was just trying to lighten the mood. No, David replied, shaking his head. You weren't lightening the mood. You were belittling me. And I can't be with someone who doesn't respect what I do. Claire crossed her arms, clearly annoyed. So, you're going to throw everything away over a little teasing? You need to lighten up. The moment she said that, something inside David snapped. He realized this wasn't just about one joke, it was about how she saw him, how she had always seen him. He wasn't an equal to her, he was a joke, something to be mocked for her amusement. Claire, I can't do this anymore, David said, his voice steady but resolute. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What? Are you serious? I'm done, David said simply. This relationship is over. David left the gala with a sense of finality that settled in his chest like a weight being lifted. The cool night air continued to calm his nerves as he walked to his car, but a rush of conflicting emotions still stirred within him. On one hand, he felt immense relief, on the other, a sense of disbelief. Could he really have ended his engagement just like that? The drive home was eerily quiet, the hum of the engine a stark contrast to the chaos of his mind. Every time he replayed the moment in his head, the hurt in Claire's eyes, the coldness in her voice, the laughter at his expense, he knew it was the right decision. But it still hurt. He had loved her. Or at least, he had thought he did. But the relationship had always been lopsided, as if Claire had never fully understood or respected who he was. And now, as he let the night settle in, it seemed clearer than ever that the relationship had been nothing more than a performance on her part. She was willing to wear the ring, but only on the condition that he played a part in her life, not as an equal, but as something to be molded. As he parked his car and turned off the engine, he sat for a moment, the weight of the situation settling in. The farm, his work, everything he'd built over the years, had always been enough for him. But now, for the first time, he realized that the life he was living was far from the life Claire wanted. And her true feelings about his work had become crystal clear. He stepped out of the car and walked to his front door, his hand pausing on the knob. As much as he hated to admit it, the road ahead felt uncertain. It wasn't just about Claire anymore. It was about him, his self-respect, and his future. In the days that followed, the fallout from the breakup started to trickle in. Friends from both David and Claire's circles began reaching out, their messages filled with confusion, concern, and sometimes, disbelief. David didn't have the energy to explain the situation over and over again. He had made his decision, and he was sticking to it. But one evening, a message from an old friend, Michael, pinged on his phone. David, I heard what happened. Are you okay? David had known Michael for years. He was one of the few friends who had always respected David's work and admired his commitment to the farm. It felt like a breath of fresh air amidst all the noise. David quickly responded. I'm fine, Mike. It was just time for me to move on. Michael didn't respond immediately, but the next day, a text popped up, I'm sorry you had to go through that, man. You deserve someone who truly gets you. If you need anything, just let me know. David sighed, grateful for the support. It was the kind of conversation he needed. Meanwhile, Claire had started her own campaign to explain the breakup to her friends. She spun a narrative where she painted David as controlling, emotional, and overly sensitive, someone who couldn't handle her sense of humor. Her social media posts, filled with passive-aggressive comments about how she had dodged a bullet, only added fuel to the fire. David saw them. He didn't engage, though. He knew that Claire's version of events was a far cry from reality, and he wasn't about to lower himself to defending his actions in public. But when a friend sent him screenshots of Claire's posts in a private chat, he realized that it was time to take control of the narrative. He couldn't let her continue to distort the truth. The next few days were filled with calls, texts, and messages from people who had attended the gala. David calmly explained his side of the story to anyone who asked. He didn't need to justify his decision, but he wanted to ensure that the truth got out. To his surprise, many people seemed genuinely understanding. Several apologized for laughing at Claire's toast, realizing afterward how inappropriate it had been. One co-worker of Claire's, who had never been particularly friendly with David, messaged him privately. "I never liked how she spoke about you," the message read. "She made it sound like she was settling for you, like you were some sort of project she could manage. That's not fair to you." David read the message twice, the words stinging but also validating his decision to end the relationship. It wasn't just Claire's words at the gala that had hurt him. It was her consistent disregard for his work, for his dreams, for him as a person. Her actions had revealed everything he needed to know about her. As time went on, the rumors about Claire's behavior continued to circulate, and they began to catch up with her. One day, David received an unexpected call from her boss, Mark. "David, I'm sure you've heard the gossip about Claire from the gala," Mark began, his voice calm but firm. "I just wanted to let you know that we are taking her actions very seriously. It's come to our attention that her behavior at the event may have reflected poorly on the company, and we'll be handling it internally." David didn't need to say much. The facts spoke for themselves. He confirmed the details of the toast, the awkwardness that followed, and how Claire had dismissed his work. Mark thanked him for his time, and David hung up the phone. He didn't know what happened next, but the next time he spoke to Michael, he learned that Claire had been passed over for a promotion she had been eyeing for months. Word had gotten out about her condescending behavior, and her reputation had been tarnished. David couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. Actions, after all, had consequences. With Claire out of his life, David threw himself even more into his work. The farm that had always been his solace became a place of new beginnings. He started taking on more challenging projects, improving his equipment, and even hosting weekend workshops for aspiring farmers in the area. The feeling of being appreciated for his expertise, his knowledge, and his work ethic was something David hadn't realized he had been missing. He realized now that he had been looking for validation in the wrong place, when all along, it was his own pride in his work that mattered most. As for the engagement ring, David sold it. He used the money to treat himself to a vacation he had always wanted, visiting the mountains and hiking in places he had only ever dreamed of. It was his way of closing the chapter on Claire and moving forward with his life. Looking back, David knew the breakup wasn't just about the toast, though that had been the catalyst. It was about respect, something Claire had never truly given him. She had never seen him as an equal, and she had never appreciated the hard work he put into his life. To her, he had been nothing more than a convenient accessory, a man she could mold into whatever she wanted. But David wasn't that man anymore. He had learned that love wasn't about making fun of each other, belittling each other's passions, or using someone for personal gain. Love was about partnership, respect, and mutual admiration. And for the first time in a long time, David realized he didn't need anyone else's validation but his own. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear what you think. Your feedback really helps me create better content for you. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Thanks again and see you in the next video. Take care.